Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Boudreaux, in June of this year, President Biden said, quote, Republicans falsely claim that I'm blocking production on federal lands. He says, but again, that's nonsense. Well, I'm a Republican and I do claim that he is blocking production on federal lands. Last month, President Biden said something different. He said, no more drilling. There is no more drilling. Joe Biden, when was he lying? Which was the lie? Because clearly the president is lying. Which one?
So, Senator, I think, as you know, production on public lands, both onshore and offshore, has not stopped. In fact, in this administration, production levels, and this is just EIA information, has increased on public lands to over 1 billion barrels a year. And so there has been no attempt by the administration to block or stop or impede production on public lands.
So then the president is lying when he says no more drilling, there is no more drilling. That's a direct lie into the camera to the American people by the President of the United States.
So I don't, I can't comment on a quote sort of out of context, but clearly there is ongoing drilling on public lands as well as production.
So under the Mineral Leasing Act, the Secretary is required to hold quarterly lease sales in each state with federal oil and gas resources. By the fall of 2023, 2.5 years into the administration, the Secretary will have held 2 of the 10 required sales in these states. So when will the department resume quarterly lease sales in the states where federal and oil gas resources are currently?
So part of what I appreciate about the bipartisan infrastructure law and now the IRA is that it does lay out a clear path, as we discussed with Senator Manchin, for our oil and gas leasing programs. That requires a period of adjustment to comply with the law, but we are moving forward with onshore leasing through the BLM in association with our renewable energy programs on public lands as well.
So I would remind you that a federal court has directed the Secretary to comply with the Mineral Leasing Act. And I'm beginning to question whether the administration believes that it's in the rule of law, because it's not behaving that way. Another question. The department recently released a draft analysis of greenhouse gas emissions associated with 3,600 oil and gas leases issued from 2015 to 2020. Until the department finalizes this analysis, thousands of leases and permits remain in limbo. When will the department issue a final environmental assessment of this matter?
So this is one of the highest priorities in the department to complete that work. As I know you're aware, we get buffeted around by various pieces of litigation and judicial rulings, and so part of what we have to do while we complete that analysis is take into account the latest judicial rulings that impact that analysis. And so in order to again, provide defensibility for leases that the department issues, we have to ensure that that work complies with the latest court rulings.
So you're saying basically a lot of lawsuits slow down the process, muck up the problem. In addition to the red tape, the lawsuits make it worse. So does the department have a plan? Yeah, go ahead.
No, that is true.
Okay. Does the department have a plan to apply the final assessment to the 3,600 leases so it can issue drilling permits in a timely manner?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Finally, in July, the Secretary released a proposed offshore oil and gas leasing plan for 2023 to 2028. One option the Secretary is considering is to offer no leases during the entire 5-year time period. I'd remind you that the federal oil production accounts for 27% of all U.S. oil production. We're 1 million barrels a day behind where we should be at this point. How can the department justify ending offshore oil and gas lease sales when President Biden continues to beg overseas dictators for more oil?
Again, as we discussed with the chairman, under the IRA, our oil and gas leasing programs are connected with our offshore wind programs. What you saw in step 2 of a 3-step process in development of a new 5-year leasing program is simply a statement of the range of possibilities from no lease sales under the Secretary's authority to essentially the same number of lease sales that was included in the previous 5-year plan completed at the end of the Obama administration.
So to follow up on the issue of the Infrastructure Act, under the Infrastructure Act, Congress appropriated over $28 billion to the Department of Interior This is nearly twice the amount of, in addition to the annual budget of about $14.5 billion. The Democrats' Partisan Inflation Act appropriated another $6.6 billion to the department, staggering amount of money. What new controls and protocols has the department put in place to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse of this spending?
Absolutely, and as I think you've heard, the administration, including the president himself, has placed an extremely high priority on ensuring controls and prevention of waste, fraud, and abuse, and the implementation of both of these bills. We take that extremely seriously. I meet with our Inspector General every other week to talk about a host of issues, including their programs, and they have new funding under the legislation as well, to work with us to ensure that there are appropriate safeguards. And we're also being mindful about economies of scale as we make these investments to ensure that the taxpayer gets full value from, again, these transformative investments under both of these pieces of legislation.